Galesburg Railroad Museum is located on 211 South Seminary Street in Galesburg, Illinois, and is also open from Tuesday to Saturday 10 to 4 and Sundays 12 to 4, and closed on Mondays and major holidays, and open from April 5 to September 30. Also, the Galesburg Railroad Museum has such history of railroad to see at the museum, and has a steam locomotive, baggage mail car, caboose, speeders, and a railroad depot with exhibits inside, and so much to see. The Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad Company was integral part of the merger, and Galesburg, Illinois particular. The first train pulled into Galesburg, Illinois on December 7, 1854. 4 original lines: the Aurora Branch, Central Military Tract, Peoria, and Oquaka, and the Northern Cross, eventually merged to form the foundation of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy system in Illinois. The formation of the railroad into and through Galesburg, Illinois, in 4 directions had a dramatic effect on the community. The population grew rapidly, and the building trades prospered, and Galesburg, Illinois became a home for a major railroad installation, and the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy became the city's largest employer well into the 20th century. In 1926, the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy employed 3,300 people in Galesburg, Illinois. That led to the formation of good relationships and financial and other benefits to all parties. The long era good feeling continued to this time of formation of the building of Burlington Northern, in 1970. The Galesburg Railroad Museum is a non-profit corporation established to promote the research, exploration, and discovery of the history of the railroad industry as it applies to Galesburg and Western Illinois. Its objective is to gather and preserve artifacts, historical documents, data, letters, accounts, and articles as it relates to the history of the local railroad. What you see right behind me is Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 was built by Baldwin in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1930, and is the 61,527th steam locomotive built by that factory, and is a 464 Hudson type steam locomotive, and is an S4 class steam locomotive. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 is one of 12 Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 464s that were built by, and were all built by Baldwin. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 was needed as the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy had the United States Post Office Department contract for moving mail between Chicago, Illinois, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. Omaha, Nebraska, and Kansas City, Missouri were connected with other railroads to the west. These engines would handle 13 to 15 cars such as coaches, sleepers, and mail cars. At that time in history, it was important for railroads to operate passenger and mail trains on time and at speed that would get the job done fast. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 was a daily sight through Galesburg, Illinois. They were taken off and put in on trains and serviced and inspected at the Galesburg Roundhouse. Federal law required that the fire be extinguished and boilers inspected on a regular time schedule. There was always an engine at Galesburg to replace one that had been taken off a train. Changing engines would not cause over a 10-minute delay. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 was never operated at its maximum speed. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 reached speed up to 100 miles per hour. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 was lunging, and they were afraid it would jump the track, and they slowed it down. Speed was checked against the speed gauge by using their watch and checking time between milepost markers. With development of the diesel engines during the late 1930s and early 1940s, when lightweight passenger cars were being built, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 held its own because early diesel engines did not have the power to handle 12 to 15 cars at top speed. Diesel engines handled the stainless steel passenger trains, leaving the combination passenger and mail trains to the steam engines unit after World War II. In the late 1940s, after the war, larger and more powerful diesel engines were made for passenger and mail service to replace the steam engines. The steam locomotives, which were used in passenger service, were then moved over into freight service. Among them, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006. They were not used to pull heavy freight trains, but on stock or fruit trains, they operated very well. The only change that had to be made was to add a seat behind the fireman's seat where the head brakeman would ride. Steam engines made for freight trains and had smaller wheels, and more wheels got to get traction on the rails. The passenger steam engine did not fade out of service until around 1960 because how well they operated on smaller freight trains during the peak season. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 generated its own electric power for lights for a steam-driven dynamo. Everything that moves on the engine is driven by steam pressure or air pressure. Also, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 was retired and then donated to the city of Galesburg, Illinois in 1963 and came to be part of the Galesburg Railroad Museum in Galesburg, Illinois. And Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 is one of 5 surviving Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 464s today. And Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 3006 can be found here at the Galesburg Railroad Museum in Galesburg, Illinois on display. And you can also even visit the cab while visiting the museum and even sit where the engineer and fireman used to sit and ring the locomotive's bell. And that's how it's done. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 13501 was built by the Aurora Shops in Aurora, Illinois in 1930 and is an NE-10 class, first-class steel caboose, and is known as a way car. Earlier cabooses were of wood construction. In wintertime, the old wooden sides would contract and frost and would form on the inside. It was not really a comfortable home away from home for the train crews. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 13501 also contained a toilet. Earlier cabooses had no toilets. The conductor did the bookwork and made out his reports at the desk while the rear brakeman rode in the cupola on the side of the air brake of Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 13501 when the train went around a curve to the left. The rear brakeman would move over to the other side to inspect the train to determine if something might be dragging, if the brakes were all released, or if there were any hot boxes. When approaching a station or track gang, he would get out on the rear platform for an inspection report from the track gang or the agent operator. Also, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 13501 was used with freight trains in the past. Also was one of many of these way car cabooses used for the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad. Also, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 13501 was retired in December 1982 and came to be on display at the Galesburg Railroad Museum in Galesburg, Illinois, where it is today. Also, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 13501 was painted green and was a Burlington Northern caboose and was numbered as Burlington Northern 11,446. Right behind me is Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 2645. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 2645 was built by Pullman in 1921 and was a classic Pullman parlor car containing 12 sections, each having upper and lower berths, plus one drawing room. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 2645 also is named Meath. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 2645 made up 4,000 of nearly 10,000 cars in the Pullman fleet in the peak year of 1931. Cars like Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 2645 operated throughout North America, offering Pullman ease and safety on almost all overnight runs. The typical car's interior was highly lacquered in tones of gray and light green. Semi-compartment sections contained winged seats patterned after colonial fireside armchairs. The upholstery and carpet were pearl green with rose undertows and oriental patterns. Oversized dressing rooms contained individual shaving mirrors for men and quaint Jeffersonian prinking seats for women. The Meath saw many years of service on the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy. With the demands of railroad passenger service and the creation of Amtrak in 1970, aged cars such as the Meath were no longer used. It was retired from that service and converted into a traveling bunk car for construction gangs on the Burlington Northern. It was identical for that purpose as a means to house and feed these employees. It was painted an orange color. The Meath was destined for scrap when in 1981. The Burlington Northern offered it to the fledgling Galesburg Railroad Museum. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 2645 was accepted and placed by Burlington Northern on panel rail to the corner of Mulberry and Seminary Streets on a pilot plot donated to the Galesburg Railroad Museum in Galesburg, Illinois. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 2645 was painted on the outside to its original colors and markings. The interior was revamped to provide museum space for exhibitions of the museum's extensive collection of artifacts and memorable. Also, today, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 2645 is preserved at the Galesburg Railroad Museum in Galesburg, Illinois, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 1945.
Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 1945 was built as a mail car, and RPO for short. And one other end of the car is a baggage car, and it is a baggage mail car. And this coach is a baggage car and mail car, RPO for short, put together. The Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy began buying all-steel baggage mail cars in 1913 with the acquisition of the cars from 1910 to 1919 in 1910 to 1919 from the American Car and Foundry Company. In 1913, an additional 15 cars were purchased also from American Car and Foundry. These cars were in 1920 to 1934. Additional cars were purchased from Standard Steel Car Company for the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, and its subsidiaries, the Colorado and Southern, and the Fort Worth and Denver. In November 1924, American Car and Foundry Company built the last cars in this series for the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, those being cars numbered from 1945 to 1949. These cars were just over 70 feet long and 14 feet high. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 1945 last operated on the Burlington lines between Denver, Colorado, and Billings, Montana. One end of Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 1945 was utilized as a baggage car. An employer of the railroad called a train bagman, or employee of the railroad called a train bagman, or bagman was in charge. This half of the car was shared with the Railway Express Agency. Among the duties of the baggage man was to store and keep track of suitcases to belonging to passengers on the train. He was to be prepared to take them off at the station where the passenger would be detraining. Another of his duties was to handle any baggage of the United States mail for which there was no room in the RPO end of the car. The bags were passed through the opening which can be seen at the center of Car 9, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 1945. The bagman made a report at the end of his run of how many mail bags he handled or stored, and the railroad in turn billed the post office department so much per bag, as they were not paying rent for storage in this end of the car. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 1945 45 was taken out of service in 1960. Also, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 1945 was retired and then came to be on display at the Galesburg Railroad Museum in Galesburg, Illinois, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 32474.
Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 32474 was built around the mid or early 1900s and is a 40-foot boxcar. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 32474 was once used on freight trains many years ago on the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad and hauled cargo such as boxes, rolls of paper, and many other things it may have hauled long ago. Then later, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 32474 was retired and then came to be put here in this spot near the Galesburg Railroad Museum in Galesburg, Illinois, where it is on display today and can be found on this set of tracks as well. And also the car is privately owned as well.
Right there, that's a locomotive's bell displayed next to this steam locomotive on display. And you can see Chicago, Burlington, Quincy steam engine's bell. But now here it is displayed here at the Galesburg Railroad Museum here in Galesburg, Illinois. You could see right there is another locomotive's bell, but displayed next to the Meath coach. And also, just like the other one, it's displayed right here. I wonder what locomotive it came from. But yeah, at least it's nicely preserved here at the Galesburg Railroad Museum here in Galesburg, Illinois. Okay, you can see here some switch stamps displayed here at the Galesburg Railroad Museum. And also, they were probably all by Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, but now here they are displayed. They're different kinds of that. Okay, you can see right there, that's a maintenance of way boggy displayed here at the Galesburg Railroad Museum just behind the caboose. And along with those speeders right there, the red ones, they're in front. It's in front of. And yeah, it was used to carry tools, but I think that, I don't know if that looks original or not, that frame that would cover things. I think it was original, but yeah, there's some track tools right there on it. Okay, you can see right there, there are three speeders. I think the red one, yeah, the red ones were used by Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, it looks like. That yellow one right there, once used by Baptist in Topeka and Santa Fe, but now here they are displayed here at the Galesburg Railroad Museum in Galesburg, Illinois. Up above me, you can see this is a wigwag signal, one of the two crossing signals displayed here at the museum. And it's a lot different compared to a railroad crossing signal that you see today. And we just swing back and forth. And here it is today. You could see right there, that's a water tower that was used for filling steam engines boilers. And it's displayed here in the fence of the Galesburg Railroad Museum in Galesburg, Illinois. And also,